All right, welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Lindsay Hamill and I'm the manager of school and volunteer docent programs at UCR Arts. If you've never visited UCR Arts before, we're the California Museum of Photography and the Culver Center of the Arts in downtown Riverside, California. We're closed right now, but we look forward to opening and in the next few months, hopefully, and welcoming everyone back to the museum. Today we have Third Thursday Talks, which is our monthly program where we feature artists, curators, performers, writers, musicians, and more. Today we'll hear from 3 curators and 4 artists from the UCR Arts new virtual exhibition called Art in the Plague Year. We'll learn more about it in just a moment, but before the program starts, we at UCR Arts would first like to respectfully acknowledge and recognize our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air. The Cahuilla, Gabrielano, Tongva, Luiseño, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, this meeting place is home to many Indigenous peoples from all over the world, including UCR faculty, students, and staff. And we're grateful to have the opportunity to live and work in these homelands. So today's program is about Art in the Plague Year, a virtual exhibition that presents art with a lens toward the future, asking artists to imagine how the world might be molded by the tumultuous events over the past year. Today, we'll hear from 3 curators in the exhibition, Douglas McCulloh, Rita Sobreiro Souther, and Nikolay Maslov. They will interview 4 artists in the exhibition, Antoine Williams, Peter Wu with Epic Gallery, and United Catalysts, which is the artist duo of Kim Garrison and Steve Radosevich. Please put any questions you have in the quick Q&A box, and we'll get to them toward the end of the program. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to chat with you about the exhibition. And I'll now turn it over to our curators to tell us more about the exhibition and the artists. So I'm going to turn it over now to Douglas McCulloh.
Hey, how are you doing? It's great to be here. I've been really looking forward to this. This is like a crazy kind of fast project in this crazy time. First off, I'll just talk a little bit about the project overall and how it happened. It's a really totally collaborative project. So a bunch of people were involved, but the key players you were already mentioned, Rita Sobreiro, Nikolay Maslov, and myself co-curated this thing. It's entirely online, so it's not an exhibition on the walls at all, and it was conceived as a digital exhibition. The project began with the virus, and like the virus, it sort of mutated. So it was originally early in the pandemic when everything was panicky and crazy, and the California Museum of Photography was closed on March 14th. And then we were on some Zoom meeting, maybe like a month and a half later or something like that. And the idea was floated of doing an exhibition sort of inspired a little bit by Daniel Defoe, A Journal of the Plague Year, which is London in the plague in 1665. And by the end of the meeting, we had taken the domain name Art in the Plague Year. So at that point, we're sort of like, oh, we have to do this project, but what is it, you know? And initially, as you'll recall, everyone who's trapped in their houses all over the world was kind of observing what that moment was like. Like, I'm in my house, we're all wearing masks or fighting about wearing masks and so on. So that current moment was really sharply observed and sort of immediately was everywhere in online exhibitions. So at that point, we looked at each other and went, we can't really do that. That's, that seems stupid. So, but then finding your way toward what it should be, how to have it mutate into something is a little bit trickier. So the project became this forward-looking idea that people are doing art, but there's a glimpse of where do we go from here? How do we get out of this? How do we, history tells us that pandemics trigger change. And so this is like, how do we reach toward that change? And the motto, I'm a bit of a fan of surrealism. I said this would be short, it's already becoming long-winded. And so there's a quote by Paul Eluard, the surrealist poet, said, "There is another world but is in this one, which I really love. So that is kind of the subtext of this. It's a more positive version of another surrealist quote that I really, really love. Tristan Tzara, the great Dada poet, said, "I am not looking for someone to open the door for me. The key is in me and I am lost." So this is a little more positive version of that. The project was built on a viral model. I mean, we're in a virus. So then invitations went out widely. We sent it to specific people or curators we know or artists we know, but then they spread it around. So we got an avalanche of interest. In a way, and we've talked about this, the curators, we're trying to kind of find our way forward. Everyone is in this moment. Like, where do we go? And so as curators, we have the sort of lucky and cheap maneuver of being able to ask that question of artists around the world. So we got 664 chunks of work about the plague year and the politics and the tumult and all the rifts and schisms that this has shown to look at. So I'll share my screen, I'm probably out of time, and just show one or two examples of things that we won't be looking at with the artists here. This is always the moment of, oh, okay, I gotta share my screen. So this is the site. I'm sure if you're visiting with us, you've probably been to the site. I'll just show maybe one or two things in a minute or two. This is work by Sarah Jane Boyers, who's a Los Angeles artist. And there's a tradition in theater that I didn't know about, in which a theater that's been shuttered, which they all have in the pandemic, puts on what's called a ghost light. And the classic version of it is a tall stand with a single light in the stage, so that when you come into the dark theater with nothing happening, there's a ghost light. So Sarah has been going to theaters all over Southern California and shooting photos of theaters of different sizes and types with a ghost light. But what theater is about is really, as is the theme for this exhibition, is forward looking. A theater is a place of transformation. It's essentially emptied, it's shuttered, but it's usually like that. It only becomes something when we create it, when we make something in the theater. So in the end, I really love this project, and she's still working on it. Another one really quickly, you can, if you've been looking at the website, is Michael Owuna, who's in Pittsburgh. And he's really doing political work, and it's related to justice issues, Black Lives Matter. The fact that the Black body for so long has been depicted as shot, dying in the street, or starving and made to look beautiful despite starving by photojournalists and so on. So instead, what he's done is taken the Black bodies, and they are shot in complete darkness. This is ultraviolet. He's also an engineer in addition to being an artist. So he's created a strobe that is an ultraviolet strobe. So then these models are spattered in ultraviolet sensitive paint, and in darkness, there's like this strobe flash of invisible light, which reveals these kind of amazing star-field figures that are essentially transcendent, ethereal. So that is really just a couple of examples. I will give one more and eat up another minute of my time because I can't resist it. Sapira Chuk, I'm not sure even how to pronounce the name, from Hong Kong, works in Las Vegas. And what she did is, she's a dancer. So this is called pas de deux in quarantine. And what she did is ask for dancers around the world, everywhere, all over the world, to send them a video of themselves dancing. And then she paired them, took stills, and did these gorgeous, gorgeous illustrations where two separate people are suddenly dancing together. So there are people all over the world brought together in art, which somehow seems like what we have to do going forward. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and hand it back to Lindsay.
Um, okay. So hello, everyone. I'm Rita Souther. And thank you, Antoine, for participating in this show, for sending your incredible work. We were all so astonished by that piece. It is a sound piece, and we will have a short clip that will play in a minute. But right now, I'm just going to read Antoine's short biography so you get to know a little bit more about him. So Antoine Williams's mixed media work investigates his cultural identity by exploring power, fear, and the perception of signs within society. Heavily influenced by science fiction and his rural working class upbringing in Red Springs, North Carolina, Antoine has created his own mythology about the complexities of contemporary Black life. An artist educator, Antoine received his BFA from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and his MFA from UNC Chapel Hill. He helped start the God City Art Collective in Charlotte, where he participated in a number of socially engaged, community-based art projects such as pop-up art shows, after-school art programs, underground rap shows, and film festivals. He has exhibited in a number of places, including the Mint Museum of Art, Michigan State University, Columbia Museum of Art, Macmillan, Brooklyn, 21C Museum, as well as many other venues. He's also a recipient of the 2017 Joan Mitchell Award for Painters and Sculptors. And finally, Williams is an assistant professor of art at Guilford College. So thank you, Antoine. I was going to ask you, this is, of course, a very short time that we are allowing you guys to talk about your practice, but I would love for you to talk a little bit more about your work in general, and then, take a few moments to talk specifically about the piece that you sent for Art in the Plague Year.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. Yeah, it's great to be talking with you. It's also great to be exhibiting with the UCR. Happy to be on this call with everyone, Doug, Peter, Nikolay, Kim, and Steve. So I guess what I'll do is I won't talk about each piece individually. I'll just talk about my general practice first, and then go into the piece about the show. So I think of myself as an interdisciplinary artist. I work in drawing, collage, paint, installation work, and obviously more recently sound. A lot of my work does deal with themes of power, also perception, sometimes fear, humanity as well, right? Like who gets the label of human. And more lately, I've been thinking about society as monstrous in that the effect of that on people with Black bodies. So a lot of my work is pulled from critical race theory. And if you want, you can scroll through, it's fine. So yeah, a lot of my work deals with, pulls from critical race theory, but also what's called monster theory. And monster theory is the notion that a society creates its own monsters, and that monsters themselves are the border between status quo and the other. And we don't necessarily fear the monster, we fear what the monster signifies. And oftentimes they signify, or they're a stand-in for marginalized groups. And so those who are in power are able to exploit that fear as a means of maintaining the status quo. So a lot of the pieces that you see, whether it's the paintings, the installations, or even the assemblage work, right? It's within that framework. And so the work that's in the exhibition, Othered Sons, it's an audio piece. It's the title is a reference to The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, a book I really love. But also a few years ago, I read a passage from Freedom Dreams by Robin D.G. Kelley. And in it was a quote, it went to the effect of, "The history of Black people is the history of movement, real or imagined. And so with that, this piece sort of pulls from that a lot. So with the sound piece, I'm creating a loose narrative of this sort of physical, emotional, psychological, cultural migration of Black people who are, migrating through those types of spaces in order to, to find freedom, essentially. And so yeah, so it's a loose narrative of that journey, and like you see many examples of that, but also examples of that in the piece, right? So you have this constant migration of the transatlantic slave trade, or the Great Migration from the Jim Crow South to the North, and also, currently, right, just day-to-day movement in public space, right? That can be, pretty tough, but also the imagined, right? Going back to Kelly, right? So someone who really influenced me, Sun Ra, who talked about he was taking Black people to outer space, or Black Panther, right? You have Wakanda moving to this utopia. And just real quickly, there's been a recent example of this. So literally a month ago was the equinox, and you had Jupiter and Saturn that aligned, and that was the first time in 100 years. So online on the internet, or at least on the Black internet, right? There's going around these memes saying that on the 21st, Black people will unlock our superpowers finally, right, after this 400 years. And so it was really cool. Like on that night, you had all these videos and images of Black people going outside, sort of looking to the sky, waiting for their superpowers to unlock. And so that was really cool, because it's this physiological shift or migration, right, that gets us closer to freedom. But yeah, so ultimately, this piece is a collage of found audio that is meant to loop over and over, and that sort of reflects this constant migration. But yeah.
And it's very interesting that when Doug was talking about this idea of works that had a glimpse about the future, that talked about the future, it's not obvious in every single piece, but they're there. And I remember when I was reviewing the applications, I had my headphones on, and so I heard your piece with my headphones on, and it was so incredibly powerful. Like, those first few seconds, I was kind of terrified for a bit, like what's happening here. Like it was kind of claustrophobic, that feeling. And as you go, there's this beautiful phrase that it's said that is a new world to migrate to, where anti-Blackness cannot follow. And that really makes the piece into this incredible combination of being in the moment, a moment that is not just of today, that has been for a long, long time, of that sense of claustrophobia, of non-freedom, and at the same time, the hope, the resilience, right? That we know where we're going, and we're going there. I was gonna ask if do you want to talk a lot about these other works, or should we ask Lindsay to play a little clip?
It depends on the time we have left.
Lindsay, how are we doing?
Yeah, let's go ahead and play the clip. No, you're doing fine on time.
Okay, let's play the clip then.
A super predator that stalks our bodies, our culture, and sanity. Our bodies, our culture, and sanity. Bodies, culture, and sanity. Our bodies, our culture, and sanity. Our bodies, our culture, and sanity. Pathology that infects every inhabitable space on this planet. work to find a new world to migrate where anti-Blackness cannot follow.
And
It's about that.
A new world to migrate where anti-Blackness cannot follow.
Okay, it should have been it. I mean, you want to stop it.
um, and you did this piece. So this what we're looking at right now. It's an site-specific installation that kind of pairs with the sound piece.
Yeah, so actually I did a residency at the Rubenstein Center at Duke University, and they built this structure for people to make art on, and this was mine was the first piece, and it was really large, and I thought that was really great. And I've done quite a few of these installations, these wheat paste installations, but I wanted it to engage the viewer in a different way, especially because people were going to be visiting it, you know, during the quarantine. And I thought another way, because, you know, this piece is static, obviously. And I'm like, how do I then engage people on a different, how do I make this piece a little more layered, a little more textured in a way? And I thought like a sound piece sort of emanating, because it's a little building. So this ideal of being stalked by white supremacy, right? It's this ideal of being stalked by something constantly, and you can't really ever escape it. And I'm thinking, well, what if this thing was like inside of this space, right? Like it's this ever-present thing. And so it feels as if, you know, the sounds that you're hearing is emanating out of the structure.
Yeah. Wow. I wish I could go there and, you know, see it in person. I think that's a really cool site-specific, you know, way to show this this piece. I believe we might have to move on to the next person. I could talk about your work with you there's so much more that I want to learn. I mean, this work about predators, the idea of, you know, it's so incredible. But maybe during the Q&A, we can talk a little bit more. So I'll thank you. And I'll pass it over to, is it Nikolay?
Yep.
Yeah, yes.
Hi, everybody. And I'm really happy to see everyone joining us here, and special thank you and welcome to all the artists and the folks tuning in at home. And really happy to introduce Peter Wu Plus, who generates artworks and immersive environments utilizing animation and rendering software, projection mapping, 3D printing, and machine learning. Thematically, he draws upon the genre of science fiction to investigate our estrangement associated with technological advancement and modernity. In 2020, he founded and created Epoch, an artist-run virtual experiment. In 2019, Wu Plus was awarded the COLA Individual Artist Fellowship and the Public Art Division commissioned with Los Angeles World Airport's Arts Exhibition Program to be completed in 2021. He received his MFA from the San Francisco Art Institute and his BFA from the University of Windsor. Wu Plus lives and works in Los Angeles. And so again, we're delighted to have you here with us, delighted to have Epoch as part of Art in the Plague Year. And I think we'll start with a few slides, and if you could talk us through these few slides, and then we could jump into a conversation.
Hi, everybody. Hi, thanks, Nikolay. And thank you to UCR Arts for inviting me on this panel. And thank you for having me, because you guys are recognizing this is actually an art project and not just a curatorial situation or a gallery in general, because I do view it as an art project. So this first show is called Epoch, and this was created at the very beginning of the quarantine. I'm sorry, I can't see myself in the corner here, but that's fine. Okay, so yeah, so this is the first show, and it was created at the beginning of quarantine, and it was in response because, you know, when quarantine happened, a lot of galleries obviously shut down, a lot of institutions shut down. So I was just looking, and there was just not a space for artists to show work. So I kind of just started this, and this was really in response to, you know, everything in the whole the whole project Epoch Gallery is an allegory of such, where one show kind of leads into another and whatnot. So this first show is on this little island here, and it's all very bleached white, and it's kind of obviously in a certain way a commentary on the fallen gallery and being alone on an island and navigating through it. So if you go on the website www.epoch.gallery, you can kind of navigate through all the spaces. Everything's in VR. If you have Google Cardboard, you can put it on your phone and do it in real VR. And this whole project is accumulation of experiences. So it comes from a lot of my work working within tech, art and tech, that crossover, and also my experiences working with the art industry and teaching, and all these things come together to kind of this perfect culmination of what happened with Epoch. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so the second show is Afterlife, and as you can see, this is a split building. I was really thinking about Gordon Matta Clark and how he kind of, you know, did these interventions within buildings. So I see this all again, this is a very metaphorical thing of how like America is split and blah, 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 but also, you know, trying to build an environment so that the artists can navigate and their work be shown within the space. And, but also the space not taking over from the way the art will look. So there's a lot of other online galleries that sometimes are really way too surreal, or there's sometimes that are really great and beautiful in themselves as artworks, but sometimes I feel like the environment itself kind of really takes over from the artwork. So I was just trying to find a really fine balance. The other thing I'm really interested in is that the gallery, that the environments are not, that they're not too surreal in a certain ways, that they're kind of tied to reality in a certain way. So we kind of see that further on. We can go to the next image. So the third exhibition is called Fallen Monuments, and this was in response to the summer and the height of the pinnacle of the Black Lives Matters movement. And this image was, you can see on the Art in the Plague Year website. And it's actually a different rendering still of the environment that I created. So that's what I submitted with another image. So this show was called Fallen Monuments, and it really, really had to do with the idea of the fragility of the institution and how can we be inclusive within that fallen institution and whatnot. So we can go to the next one. This show is Labyrinth. So I invited Amir Nickervan, who's a Los Angeles-based artist, to create this labyrinth, which is based on his own sculptural works. And so we, you know, sometimes a lot of artists use this space to kind of think about things that's not really physically possible in their own practice, whether because of scale or because of monetary or institutional restrictions. So we've blown up a large scale version of his work. And then so you can kind of walk through it and navigate through it. And the environment, everything I rendered and designed and built. And then I placed all the works within that crazy labyrinth. You really get lost with this in this one. We can go next one. Okay, this is another rendering still of the show, Phantom Limb. And we're talking about the idea of allegory. Thus far, all the works, all the shows that I've been doing really kind of talk about the fragility of the institution and how it's kind of messed up, obviously, with everything that's going on, and the idea of inclusivity within that. So this was, I modeled the recent demolition of the Lachman Amundsen building to spec, kind of, and then like just built it perfectly, then destroyed it, and then built all the insides and the environment around it, and then placed all the works within it. So 90% of the artists that I choose to be in these shows don't really have 3D experience. So I am really helping them kind of make a transition to this virtual world. So I'm talking with them, I'm helping them figure out what they can do with this space. And a lot of other times artists use this space to maybe try to generate a work that they just have in mind that's an imaginary work, or they're just starting on something new. So we're just kind of talking things through and how we can realize their vision. You can go to the next one. So this is the current show. This is Substrata, and this is in collaboration with Alice Kunitz, Los Angeles Museum of Art. And she has so she makes these pavilions that are physically based. And I thought it would be really interesting to collaborate with her because our ethos is very similar in how we approach creating a new context for art. And that's what this whole project is really kind of about, is, you know, creating these new kind of ways of putting artwork in these contexts that really kind of take you away from the white walls, but at the same time being a mirror to white walls, saying that, you know, there's context to these white walls and there's history to these white walls, and that white walls are not necessarily neutral. And what happens when you put artworks in these kind of contexts, and how does it change the artwork? How does the art environment change the artwork, and how does the environment change, or the artworks change the environment, vice versa? So this is a really intensive show. You can go through all her pavilion, and there's all an underground cave that you can kind of navigate through. And the work in this is really quite exceptional. And the environment is the largest environment to date that I have built. It's literally the size of like a mountain and like a whole cavern and everything. So yeah, good questions.
And just sort of piggybacking off that, and obviously there's artistic as well as curatorial choices that go into Epoch. I'm just curious if you could share a little bit about some of those choices, such as, you know, what is the physics engine of this place going to be? What is the UI, UX? Some of these things that are maybe specific to a web and immersive experience, and not necessarily, you know, a white cube gallery like you mentioned.
Yeah, so I teach at system impacted use, so a lot of them don't have computers. So it was really important for me to build this gallery so that they would be able to see it on their phones and whatnot, so that everybody could access this if they just have internet. The way I curate, and if I can call it curation in that aspect, because I really don't write didactic, I really try to allow the environment to kind of talk about what is going on, what the feeling is with the pieces, and what kind of the overall theme is. So I kind of usually choose one artist to kind of center around and pair it with an environment, and it is, you know, the ideologies and the thematics are similar. And then I kind of branch out like a web and choose different artists based on their work, and then it kind of like spreads out like a web. And they're all connecting, so in a certain way, as in my brain, and how it would work in the space. There's many other galleries that you can go to online, but most of the time you probably would have to download an app, or maybe it's just straight up VR, and that you have to have an Oculus or something to use it. And so I really wanted that it to be accessible to everybody in that way.
And that is actually all the time we have for this, and obviously there's more things to explore, more questions to ask, and hopefully during the Q&A we could dive a little bit deeper. But I'm happy to pass the virtual floor, so to speak, over to Doug. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Hey, all right, I'm back. Like it or not, I'm lucky to, you know, talk here with United Catalyst, which is Jim Garrison and Steve Radosevich. As you can see, I won't read their bio. They do all kinds of stuff, but I will tell you that before I ever met them, I heard a story that is maybe just a little bit legendary of them trying to apply and get into the MFA program at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas as a collaborative. So I gather it was quite a fight to take, you know, an art institution that's supposed to be open-minded and persuade them that they could accept a collaborative rather than an individual, and you applied as a collaborative. So I thought that was kind of wonderful and a bit transgressive and, I don't know, groundbreaking. So with that, I think what we should really do is go through the stuff that you wanted to show and then talk a bit about, I had a question or two if we have time, about your stuff in this exhibition.
Okay. First, we wanted to say how happy we are to be here, and also how excited we are to be here with Antoine and Peter, who have done amazing things. Also, as to what you said about UNLV, they pretty much jumped in feet first on that, to their credit.
Okay.
So we'll run through some of our work. We started collaborating in 2001 as undergraduates at Cal State Long Beach. And Lindsay, you can just go through these slides like every 10, 15 seconds. This first project was the very first project we did, the purification project. And from the beginning, when we started to work together, we wanted to make art that was meaningful to the community around us. And our community that we met in was Cal State Long Beach. And they were having some trouble with their environment. And we said, let's create a ritual to bring everyone together, to listen to this community and to try to move forward. And that was our purification project. We didn't set out to be conceptual artists or performance artists. And, but that's exactly what happened when we started working together and working with the idea that art and ritual have always gone hand in hand in society. And so we've been fascinated by how artists make the tools of our rituals. And so over the years, we've created a number of our own machines as ritual tools, like our iron camera that we use to take photos in a meditative manner. And so our passion of building objects that can be used as focal points to discuss things with our communities and discuss things with ourselves has been something at the forefront of our practice together. We kind of go back and forth between ritual projects that involve a community in need, an issue to address, and projects that use ritual to address our own personal needs. And so this photography project with the iron camera was more of a personal need, our relationship to the environment and slowing time down, because everyone knows how to take a picture these days. We all have access to cameras, but we're not always doing it mindfully. And so our art practice, being able to connect us to mindfulness and connect us to nature, and connect us to our sense of what's larger than ourselves, that's been something that has been really powerful for us, and that we try to share in our work, which is usually in an installation form so that it can be immersive or an immersive performance. One of our, the next project here is the Skywheel project, if you go to the next slide. And this is one of our largest projects that involves the community, because this is a project that invites everyone in the world to share a prayer for the earth in the next 1,000 years. And this is an idealist dream project where we collectively as citizens of the Earth, put forth our wishes for the future, and then put them in a space satellite that can orbit the Earth and send those prayers out around the entire planet. This is a really exciting project to get to work on as a community project for us. As part of that, the more calm meditative part of it is also taking those prayers that we receive from people and working it into all kinds of artwork that's in it. And this piece, Sacred Mountains of the World, is a bunch of photo, drawing, painting, collage that researches all of the places around the world that are considered sacred mountains or hills. And so, we just get down these rabbit holes of projects because we love researching and we love connecting with the idea of the Earth as a sacred place and our actions being sacred actions. The Skywheel Project has been affected by our plague year, and it's also made us reevaluate things. So now, if you move to the slide of work, one more, there we go. So let's talk about this work that we're in. All right, I did a good job. I got through like 20 years of our work there in 3 minutes. So now our work is done. We can actually chat about the now.
One thing we were going to say, I think, is in terms of some of these other projects where Kim talked about them addressing our needs, what they were a lot of times doing is we would invent a way for us to learn more about these kinds of systems.
That's good.
And and I think that's a big part of what we do all the time. If we're creating rituals, we're doing that entirely sincerely, and for the most part, we're doing it because people have asked us to, in one way or another. And so we have to learn how to do it, and that's a big part of what we're doing with our work all the time. And I think it's a part of what we're doing with this thing too. Mm-hmm. It's a process of discovery, and it's a process of accumulating wisdom in a way.
I think we were all amazingly taken with these pieces, and I'll just explain. You guys should really explain because you're probably better at interviewing each other or something than I would. But is that there are two sets of rituals here, and it doesn't involve satellites. It's so modest and wonderful. One is our repairs to a place in the Eastern Mojave in Nevada, actually, where you spend a lot of time and have deep connections. And it is literally repairs. So it's kind of ritual repair of the building, as I understand it. And the other is sort of inking of a Webster's dictionary and leaving things like chant on this one. And what I love is that these are rituals, but they're very modest. You essentially, in some way, you say the current ways the old ways aren't working anymore. We have to have new systems to operate. So we're like in an existential crisis. What do you do? Ink a dictionary. It's so modest. It's a ritual, but somehow a daily activity will get us forward, move us forward. That's not really a question, but a prompt.
Yeah. Both of us have had a lot of times where our family members were dying, and Kim's been inking this dictionary for 15 years in a very meditative state when she does it, and it's I think it did start in a time of a very stressful time for you. Mm-hmm. And it is this sort of reductionist thing where you're taking away the things that you don't want to concentrate on so that you can concentrate on the things that that you're wanting to get a benefit from. And so it was really appropriate during this period of time to have a tool like that to be using. And so it's an artwork that, you know, we're creating, but it's also a tool we're using during this period of time. And the work on the architecture in the desert was the same kind of thing. We were installing protective talismans on the buildings. At the same time, we're having to make repairs on these holes that have been widened over the years by the animals chewing on them, the weathering process, the wood shrinking, etc. But at the same time, we're needing a sort of a protective talisman. Part of it was because we had numerous robberies all through that valley leading up to this. But part of it is there was this plague and a myriad of other stressful things that all of us in the world are facing and all of us in the country are facing. And so it seemed like the appropriate way to handle that, to turn this process into a process that brings power to us doing it and to our environment, right?
Yeah, and we mentioned that the Skywheel project got a bit derailed with the COVID situation, and we had to really be introspective as artists who want to have our art be helpful to ourselves and to others. Is this project helpful right now? Or like, what is helpful in a plague, in a catastrophe? And really it's I think we found for ourselves that we were moved by doing things that were more humble, doing things that were directly helpful. You know, we call this work psychic protectors, and it's like, I think probably everyone here has been doing things this year to protect their psyches, and we literally were protecting a building, and that made it a great ritual. But even better was just like paring things down to simplicity, to our homes, protecting our homes, and protecting what's important to us. We have this saying, look for the treasures you already have. That's something that we go around trying to find as we move around the desert and as we interact with people. You know, as Americans, we're constantly being told to get new things and experience new. And the desert always teaches us to appreciate what's there, appreciate the history, appreciate what's worked for thousands or millions of years. And it's a time for appreciating what we have, and it's a time for honoring it and protecting it, and not necessarily changing it all, which was really what was lovely about this building project for us. Was we had an opportunity to either buy all new materials and clad our buildings with new materials and rip out the old, or we had an opportunity to go and scavenge 100-year-old pieces of metal from the old mining camp on the property, and take things from buildings that hadn't been used in 100 years and then put them to use. And I feel like we as Americans especially have a lot of things that we're not putting to use that we really could.
One last comment, and then I guess we should jump into questions and free for all. But I would just say on the dictionary inking, it's also a sort of it's a little bit in making these choices, what is important? It's what you leave, but it's also what you eliminate. It's what you don't do. It's what you move beyond, which sort of is political and personal and humble, and yet core and grand and right in front of you. The words are in the dictionary. You just have to say, I want share instead of cheat, or, you know.
Yeah.
So I love that. It's so simple and yet it's universal all at once.
Yeah, I think that we all have these kinds of rituals that are very simple like this, and we all make these decisions unintentionally. We're always choosing, we're always defining meaning from things, and this year is a year for making new meanings and new definitions, for sure.
Nice. All right, I guess I don't know what we do now. Lindsay's in charge.
Yeah. So first, I just want to say thank you to the artists for, you know, just talking about your work, your impressive bodies of work in a short period of time. And we really appreciate that. And we'll go ahead and open it up. I don't see any questions in the Q&A box yet. So just remind everyone, you can go ahead and start.
There's stuff in the chat.
Okay, yeah, let me start looking through there.
I'll just throw in real quickly that you artists doing your whole everything you've done in 3 minutes is reminds me of a story I always tell about Jean Le Carré, who just died like a month or two ago. The author who was asked, like, how do you feel when one of your novels is turned into a movie? He said, well, it's pretty nice, but it's kind of like having one of your oxen turned into a bouillon cube. So that's what you guys have been doing.
I'm just, while we're waiting, while I scroll through the chat, I'm just curious if any of the artists, if you want to talk about other artists you've discovered through the exhibition and have, connected with or really enjoyed.
So this isn't an artist I just discovered. I've known him a few years, but I was so overjoyed when I saw that we were in that same exhibition. Michael Une, like Doug previously was talking about him, but what I love about his work being in the show and with my work, we're sort of at, we're both talking about the body, we're talking about Black bodies, but I like that we're approaching it from different perspectives. I am talking about sort of these bodies that are existing and that are feeling the effects of like white supremacy and the effects of, systemic racism and what that does to the body. And so these contorted forms and all of that, right? And so these bodies that are in this sort of pretty distressful state. And, Michael's talking about what we want, right? This sort of the other side of that, right? And just so the history of like Black Heart America, there's been this sort of like back and forth as to like, how do we best articulate or exhibit Black bodies? And it's always been this conversation of, no, we have to like show us at our best or us with joy, or we have to kind of show the brutal reality. And I don't really buy into either or. I think it's great that we're able to show the entirety of all of that. And so I was really, because I've always been a fan of his work. And so I was really happy to see sort of his work in the exhibition as well.
Yeah, I would just jump in and say it's funny because your statement has in it references to Afro-pessimism,
yeah,
which is the bleak side of things, and he talks about transcendence. So it's a marvelous pair. You're dealing with the same issue but coming at it from different angles, and it's really great.
And speaking of Michael Iwana, he actually just threw in a question for Antoine. So he's asked, Antoine, could you talk a bit more about your sound installation and your influences from Sun Ra? I hear and feel a resonance between your piece and Sun Ra's Spaces the Place and his poem Astro Black Mythology, which also influenced me too. Have you engaged with those pieces, or what other pieces from Ra's oeuvre speak to you?
Yeah, no, I mean, sort of if you're a Black artist dealing with this type of work, Sun Ra's sort of the godfather of a lot of this, and you're sort of standing in his shadow when you do this work. And like I saw Space is the Place in grad school, and it completely blew my mind. There's one scene in there where there's these young Black kids, and they're in this, I don't know, they're playing like pool and they're hanging out, and Sun Ra shows up dressed, like in everything, and he says that, I'm here to take you away, right? And he was like, and just the juxtaposition of that, I thought was really amazing. And so, also, like, he talks about like intentionally making work, like him and his band will take classical like music and intentionally play it incorrectly as sort of a way of ownership. And I thought that was a really great thing to do. And so I so I've always been really influenced by his music, but also like just this the movie space as a place. So yeah, definitely some of the sounds that you're hearing in the piece, there is like these references to like space, especially the section that I played when they actually get to this new planet. That definitely reminds me of space as the place, the actual song. So yeah.
Right. And do any other artists want to talk about maybe other people that you've discovered through this process, through this exhibition? We can just open it up. Any other comments or questions?
I wanted to comment on Tyler Stallings' piece of 3 disasters in a stairwell. And I'm familiar with Tyler's work as a curator and a writer, but I had never seen an art piece from him. This video piece, it really moved me as being something that projected our collective anxiety. The stairwell being this safe interior space, it has that like Jungian reference of it's your soul, it's your home, it's your body, and then these disasters coming at you inside there, and you're just kind of bracing yourself for the next one. And I felt like that was a visceral depiction of what we've been going through. And I thought, like, that's what good art does, is it tells a story to us that we can't just say directly out loud. It connects with our feelings in that way. So I really connected with that one.
I had a phone conversation with an artist last week in Seattle, and they had been looking at the website, and they brought up 3 disasters in a stairwell. And their comment was that after the 3 disasters, which are, like a helicopter crashing and a tornado and a car tumbling at you, and then boom, back to a quiet stairwell, that they thought it could essentially just go on and on and on, become like one of Peter's, environments where, okay, then a ship crashes and then there's an explosion, and then it would be just one. It could be like 200 different disasters after one after another. And that's what we've been living through.
Yes.
For me, I'm gonna butcher his name, Baldermo Robelas Menendez. His work, his photos were really, really quite powerful to me. This idea of using the natural world with the body and really changing into this kind of also monstrosity in a certain way. That was really powerful. Also, I thought Sarah's work, which Douglas mentioned in the beginning, was also really powerful, and how lonely and how poetic it is. And I really was drawn to that also. So.
I see in the chat we have one of the artists, Sandra Klein, who I saw earlier on a previous Zoom call, and she's got photographs in which she slowly erased everything in the digital photo, but the shadows, which are quite beautiful, and you might take a look at those. So yeah.
We had a question from Susan Meyerland for anyone. She asked, the extended period of physical isolation, being cut off from casual interaction, collaboration, the play of ideas, was that liberating, stifling, or both? Or did you find virtual substitutes? So anyone who wants to take that.
For me, it wasn't much of a difference, just in general, because I just work out of my home and my studio anyways with all my computers. So I'm from Gen X, so we're latchkey kids. So we just kind of like this is how it is. Just leave us alone and we'll perform. But for me, the idea, it was, of course, very lonely not be able to go outside and stuff like that and see and interact with artworks and friends and whatnot and family. So I thought about building that community. So the community of Epoch, you know, inviting artists and having the opportunity for them to show within this. And a lot of them have said that, of course, a lot of us have lost all our exhibition opportunities. So this was like, okay, like, thank you for giving me something to do, giving me something to look forward to, and a new way of actually thinking about my work, which, you know, is beyond the physical realm. So it makes them think about a different way of how to approach work. And that really kind of makes me feel good, you know, certainly. So.
John DeBola, who's in the show, I asked him after like a couple months into the pandemic, he said, I actually didn't notice for the first 6 weeks that, you know, he's always just in the studio. So I'm sorry.
Well, that just goes to show that we're all very lucky people, you know, that we can do our work from home. And but I was going to say about Peter's gallery, you know, for me, what really impressed me was that, you know, as Doug was mentioning, at the start of the pandemic, you know, museums, we have to keep going, right? We are still very immersed in this logic, in this world of productivity. Like, we have to keep going, like, you know, and so I kept seeing more and more exhibitions, online exhibitions, virtual exhibitions, and they often, you know, after the novelty, like, they were never very satisfying to me. Like, the 3D environment for exhibition, I get tired. I get more tired than physically, you know, than my back gets tired looking at an exhibition at a museum. It can be confusing, and, you know, and it's rarely about the work. Like, you get lost, like the work gets lost. And so what really amazed me in your project is that, first of all, it's an artwork on its own, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, the works, maybe you don't see them in the same way that you would see them in the gallery, but they gain so many other, you know, levels and ways of, you know, the way you're approaching them, the attention you're paying to them, because you are immersed in that space. And also, you know, I'm not a video game person. You know, unfortunately, for my husband, he would like me to be, but I really am amazed by the abilities of computer graphics and how these sort of environments can be created. So my question, I guess, following this long comment, is, as artists, I think, you know, we feel a certain way as curators, as exhibition managers, the people who work in exhibitions and are constantly, you know, that we look forward to going into the museum, putting artwork up and seeing artwork. For you, during this year, that relationship with the institution, with the galleries, with the, you know, colleagues, I imagine that it has changed a lot. And do you think that there is going to be this sort of parallel world of virtual and on-site programs?
Yeah. I think what I've done has, in a way, proven that there can be a space for both, for virtual and physical. I think that institutions will have to step it up and have some kind of online virtual aspect and to go along with their actual physical shows. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing going to replace actually going to see an artwork in a museum or a gallery. But what I'm trying to achieve is, so as you said, is a different kind of level of interaction, a different way of seeing the artwork, maybe necessarily that's in the space. So it's giving it a new context, giving it a new kind of way of looking at it. And also, yeah, as you said, like not overshooting it and over kind of burying it, or letting it's a kind of weird thing, because this thing is actually really, really complicated and how to create each show, because each show I'm trying to respond to what's going on in the world and then trying to bring that into a virtual show each time. So a lot of cases, I don't know what the next show is going to be until something happens. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. And then I try to gather. And so it takes me maybe like a month of trying to gather everybody, build the works, build the environment. So it's a very short time spent each time before the shows, trying to build everything together. And so it's a response to what is going on in the real. And I think that's what makes the project Epoch kind of important, as because it's not really in a way fantasy based, that there's a relationship to your physical reality. And that's why I also like including works that are physically based, that you could see them in the real life. So it kind of tethers you between the things. So it's not all digital fantasy and not all video game. So it has a relationship to your present social political reality.
And for me, it has a little bit of that physical experience of discovering a work as you turn the corner.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these other virtual environments are very restrictive. You have to follow this path. You see the little dot, you know, you have to go there. The arrow, you know, takes you there. And your shows, you actually can get lost. And
Yeah.
you know, there's ways to navigate in a very, you know, straightforward way, but you can get lost. You can turn a corner and like, oh, is this a thing?
Yeah, and there's
Is this
always all different ways of seeing things. There's all, you turn a corner and there's all these different things that you can look at and experience it in a different way. You can slowly go through, you can rush through it. There's a map that you can just jump to different places. But I kind of see it, when I kind of see building it, I kind of think of it as the movie, like setting a scene. How do you go through a movie? How do you navigate it where there's different characters that you come along? Where is there a pinnacle, or maybe there's something that happens crescendo, and then how does it end and how does it tie together all the way around as a complete piece within everything? So, yeah.
And you can, maybe we can get Antoine to install one of his sound pieces in it. And
when I heard that sound piece, I'm like, I want that. I would love to put that in one of the shows. So if you
then
allow me,
the people that are breaking in.
No, I just love how subversive your pieces are to sort of this traditional approach to exhibition, and sort of these subversive like landscapes that they is amazing.
Yeah, people don't sometimes. There's a lot of categorization that goes in the art world, so they don't really know how to categorize what I'm doing. A lot of people think I'm just doing a curatorial thing, or it's just straight up gallery. But I'm not function as a gallery. I don't accept money. Any sales or inquiries go directly to their artists or the gallery. So I'm trying to figure out different ways of how to break the system in a certain way and how to break the status quo, because I've seen a lot of beginning galleries start up and they always fall into the same pattern, and then they have to sell to collectors and whatnot. And then it became just a vicious cycle, and I'm trying to figure out how to break that within this. And the whole thing is an allegory. Yeah, it's super subversive. I mean, I've been taking down every show is a ruin, essentially, other than Labyrinth. And then with this show, because I said, I mean, it was in January, so I was like, okay, the inauguration is going to come. Maybe it's a little time for hope. How do we rebuild an institution? And who am I going to partner with that would be the perfect partner to help me build our institution, and how to reframe everything? So there, in this new show, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of things going on, but there's also an above ground and below ground thing going on. There's a lot of things to work out. That is not all beautiful and peachy keen, you know, and, you know, it's trying to do things like that. So, and the next show, yeah, there's all these other things that are going on. So
I think it might be
please, Anton, if I could please, I will gonna hit you up later. So please email me.
Let's do it.
No, I was just going to comment. I think it's a little bit ironic that you reference LACMA blowing up their buildings, whereas you're building them, and now you're building hopeful ones. You know,
that is actually a perfect representation almost to what it looked like when it was demolished.
I know.
So there's a photo, and I'm trying to do it exactly the same, and then you can actually go through it and see artworks and experience it within this ruin. And what does it mean when all the artists are mainly Latino artists and Latinx artists, and what does that mean to the idea of what LACMA shows in general and what their collection is, and all these questions that go around. And yeah, it was a touchy subject. I thought it was a great show, but I think a lot of people in a certain way didn't want to touch that huge machine. So in every way, all the shows have gotten reviews and press. For some reason, that one but it got the most views on my site. So I was like, okay, this is weird. I mean, like, what's going on? Does no one want to touch this show because it directly has to do with the LACMA, you know? So it's very strange that, it is a dig.
You mentioned something about that show that made me think about, the going into this project as an open call, and Doug can tell you that I was, I'm the person who's always thinking like logistics, how we make this happen, timelines and organize things.
Yeah.
And so going into it as an open call, I was already foreseeing, all these complications, but very excited to do it. But, I was trying to like put order in things, on things. And, in the end, it was such a privilege to do something that, we wouldn't be able to have all these artists from all these countries. People sent us submissions in Spanish. We wouldn't be able to have these works in the gallery. It would be a very expensive show, let's put it that way. Yeah. We probably wouldn't find these artists, a lot of the artists, because, the networking, the connections, there's only that much that it can reach, right? And it takes time. And, maybe I would have found so-and-so's work in 2 years because of some other, chance, a moment of chance. But that's what this project for me, what made it so interesting as a curatorial experience was the ability of really reaching out and bringing people into one space that we as a museum would find it very difficult to do. And doing that during such a challenging year was particularly rewarding. And, and we had to leave a lot of great art out. Like even though the internet allows us to, include a lot more than a physical space, it's still an exhibition. We still wanted it to be curated and concise and have a logic or some sort of logic or some sort of kind of organization. But yeah, I don't know if, Doug, do you want to talk a little bit more about that, how that experience turned out to be for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll just very, very briefly say that I think the project in the end, in the beginning, it was, we should cast a super wide net. We should see what happens. We won't know what happens. And those are the best journeys to set out on, of course, are the ones where you don't know where you're going. And so that was definitely one of these. It was a little daunting and we had conversations, but in the end, it was wonderful. We're honored to have all of you artists who do amazing things. And it's also connective. It's also connective. It's the whole world. We have people watching from Australia now and making comments, I mean, it's just really, that's pretty wonderful that at this point in time, I mean, I hate to say, unity, which we saw Biden, but it is, that's what it is, and some sense of meaning.
And I was thinking about this moment where I think Doug and I were discussing something. Oh, it was about the title being Art in the Plague Year. And at the same time, we're asking people to look into the future. And, I just immediately kind of thought about that paradox and said, well, artists are people. Aren't we asking too much of them? I can see the future. I can think about the future. Aren't we asking too much, at this moment? And, and it turned out that Doug is right. Like, artists are incredibly generous and they do see beyond in a way that other people don't. And that's always, I think that's what keeps us going.
Yeah,
and just to quickly piggyback off what Rita was saying, another artist we work with, Stacey Robinson, brings about this concept of temporary utopia and the potential of a art space to bring that about. And I just want to underscore the gratitude to all the artists that really are at the core of the show and just for bringing this maybe moment of this brief utopia where we could just explore maybe some of these terrifying or complicated or difficult concepts through the lens of art. And I know a lot of artists here also mentioned science fiction and then the possibility of science fiction for us to peer over that horizon and be able to think through some of these things and just be able to even grasp them conceptually and then be able to trace a step forward through that.
So thank you. I think that's a wrap.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. I think we could have kept talking for another hour because there's so much to explore here, but want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much to the artists who have shared your work with us today, and for everyone who's participated in the chat. It's been a really lively discussion today. We hope you'll all join us for the next Third Thursday Talks program. It's on February 18th, and that's when we'll talk to Hawkett, which is the cutting edge piano duo of Sarah Gibson and Thomas Kochev. And they're both based in Los Angeles, and they're pianist composers who perform experimental contemporary music. Don't have that posted yet, but we will be posting that on our website and social media very soon. I'm gonna go ahead and put in the chat. I put Art in the Play Gear website, so everyone can go there, our website, and then also our donation link. If you're able to donate, we always appreciate that. It's because of our supporters and friends that we're here. And Third Thursday Talks are made possible with the generous support from the Marjorie and Glenn Thomas Memorial Fund. So we're very grateful for that as well. Again, thank you so much to everyone for being here, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.